You're listening to the Health Courage Collective podcast, episode 12, That's Like Me. Welcome to the Health Courage Collective podcast, the show for women who are too busy to slog through hours of generalized, inapplicable, and often contradictory health information, but too smart to ignore that a few minutes of focused attention now can prevent years of suffering in the future. I'm your host, Christina Hackett, a pharmacist who doesn't want you to live on prescriptions, a certified coach specifically trained to maximize your potential, and a compulsive learner obsessed with preventative, cutting-edge, holistic, and integrative medicine. I'm on a mission to increase your physical and mental resilience so you can fearlessly look forward to your next 40-plus limitless years. Your time is now. Let's go. Hello, I'm so glad to be here with you today. I hope you're doing great. Our time together today will be a bit shorter than usual, but about one of my favorite quick and powerful tools. This is really good. Okay, so I've shared with you before that I'm certified as a coach through the Human Potential Institute, but that I'm working on a second and different coach certification through a company called Optimize Coach. In that Optimize Coach certification program, one of the things we were taught to say to ourselves, and it comes out in conversations with each other too because we use the same Optimize Coach lingo, is "That's like me." It's kind of a catchphrase we have, and I love it. This is a phrase that came from a rifle shooter and coach named Lanny Basham. He won a gold medal in rifle shooting in the 1976 Olympics and has won tons of other medals and world competitions in rifle shooting. Afterward, he worked as a mental toughness coach and has trained everyone from PGA golfers, Olympic champions, and whole Olympic teams to the FBI, Navy SEALs, and Miss America contestants. Lanny tells us that one of the keys to peak performance is fine-tuning our self-image. He tells us that how we behave will always be in line with how we see ourselves. Your self-image is what makes you act like you. And he says that we will never consistently perform better than our self-image. If we do something abnormally better than what aligns with our image of ourselves, we won't continue that behavior because it doesn't fit with who we think we are. He tells us that our current self-image has been formed by thousands of imprints, is what he calls them. It's not a werewolf romance thing. What he calls an imprint is just a reaffirming to yourself of who you are, a reinforcement of the evidence you have for what makes you, you. An awesome quote from Lanny Basham that I like is, "Changing a self-image that is keeping you from reaching your goals may be the most important skill you will ever learn." End quote. What do you think about that idea? Of all the skills you've ever learned or hope to learn someday, the most important could be to gain the ability to successfully change your self-image. Pretty powerful, right? And the way to go about making that change is to change those imprints, the little evidences we have for who we really are. It sounds big, but it doesn't have to be overwhelming. In fact, it can be easy and fun. It just takes noticing your thoughts about things as they happen and deliberately choosing language that reinforces the up-leveled self-image you're working to create. It can be as simple yet powerful as, "That's like me." It's perfect. Now, not to get too confusing, but Lanny Basham has a son named Troy Basham, who's also a world champion rifle shooter and also wrote a book about elite performance. And in Troy's book, he lays out an awesome strategy called reloading. Hopefully all the rifle shooting analogies are working for you. I've never actually fired a rifle before, but I still love the analogies, so I hope they're okay. I might even share one more Olympic rifle shooting story with you sometime in the future because it's the best story ever. Okay, back to reloading. Troy says top performers protect their self-image by having a planned thought process after performing a specific task. The process has 3 steps to it and is referred to as reloading. The purpose of reloading is to refresh the brain with the thought process of what you want while not getting caught up in what just happened. Successful people do not become engulfed in poor performances. End quote. I like how he put that. Have you ever gotten engulfed in a poor performance? I have. The 3 steps to reloading are to first evaluate, then to rehearse corrections, and then to let it go. So for your evaluation, if it was great, you say great, or that's like me. If it was okay, you say okay, and if it was not good, you say needs work. By saying great or that's like me, you imprint your awesomeness. Troy says that if you perform a task well, you should feast on that performance. The self-image needs self-praise in order to grow. I love the image of feasting on success. My Optimize coach, Brian Johnson, talks about eating your successes like an energy bar to fuel your service to the world. Feast on success. Imprint it as who you are. Like, I set myself up for success by prepping 7 servings of vegetables to have with my lunches this week. That's like me. When we perform at a less than stellar level, we must not drive that negative performance into our identity by getting all emotional about it. Things like, I'm such a moron. Why do I always mess up when it matters most? I'm so lazy. I just can't get this right. And especially, so-and-so would never have done it like that. Those are not helpful. Elite performers simply do not allow those toxic thoughts to take over their minds. Troy tells us to simply say, needs work. How does the phrase needs work feel to you? It's meant to help you non-judgmentally and non-emotionally think through how you could have done it better. That's what we want to rehearse. Imagine the exact scenario and how exactly to perform that task a little better. I didn't get to bed till 11:30 for 3 nights in a row and now I'm dragging. Needs work. You can even go through a full mental rehearsal start to finish in your mind. Brushing your teeth at 9:45, setting your alarm for the next morning, and contentedly relaxing into your pillow at 10 o'clock. Then, rather than imprinting your negative behavior, you imprint the positive rehearsal instead. Pretty cool, huh? Troy says, what you allow yourself to think about after a task matters. Which is true. We can see how it becomes part of who we are, right? Then, after you've rehearsed with your correction, you let it go. The end. Beautiful. Whenever you do something the way you wanted to, you say, yes, that's like me, and really feel it. It's true. That's who you are. And after you've done something that, quote, needs work, you rehearse how you would have preferred that it go, what you could have done differently to steer it in that direction, and then feel how that's like you. You can also rehearse ahead of time and imagine how you want things to go in the future and say, that's like me too. Okay, going back to the dad, Lanny, he shares this story. He says, back in the 1970s, I was shooting good kneeling scores and began approaching the national record of 396 out of 400. I wanted to set the record at 400, a perfect score. But I had never actually fired a 400, even in training. Nonetheless, I vividly rehearsed shooting the first 100, then another, and another. I visualized each of the last 10 shots building toward the record. I rehearsed what I knew would happen at that point. I would realize that I was above the record. Next, I rehearsed hearing a voice say, that's okay, I do this all the time. Then I imagined shooting the final 10 easily and saying to myself, another perfect 400, that's like me. I rehearsed this sequence several times a day for 2 months. In my first competition since beginning the rehearsal, I started with a 100 kneeling. My next 2 targets were also 100s. I began my last series with 10, 10, 10, 10, only 5 more to go, 10, 10, 10. Then reality set in. I was above the record. I heard an internal voice say, that's okay, I do this all the time. I shot 2 additional 10s, setting the national record at a perfect 400. We can't do more than we think we are. End quote. I love this. I think the power in the "that's like me" phrase is getting a glimpse of who we really are. There's an awesome story from high performance coach and mental strategist Todd Herman, who says in his book, The Alter Ego Effect, quote, "I've always been fascinated by comics, comic book heroes, and the world they live in. The origin stories, the villains, and the epic battles always found a way to draw me into their worlds. As a kid, I loved the Christopher Reeve Superman movies. Today, people might laugh at those 1980s productions compared to the epic rebirth of superhero movies happening now. But back in the day, they were awesome. Now, here's a riddle for you. Everyone knows that Superman and Clark Kent are the same. But which one is the alter ego?" I've asked this question for the past 15 years, countless times in front of audiences all around the world, and 90% of the audience immediately yell out, "Superman!" It sounds right, because when you think of alter egos, you think of superpowers, heroism, and epic battles, all the qualities of a superhero like Superman. Except, it's wrong. The alter ego isn't Superman, it's Clark Kent. Superman is the real person. He created the alter ego, mild-mannered reporter Clark Kent, as a useful persona to go unnoticed day to day on Earth and blend in to help him achieve his goal of understanding humans. End quote. Ah. That's the choir of angels singing, in case you couldn't tell. Isn't that the best, though? Our method of upleveling what we're capable of is not by fabricating a false identity. It's who you really are. The person who messes up sometimes, stumbles along the way, or lets her fear or impulse win some of the time is not the real you. We love her and we accept her, but she's not the real you. The real you is the one with the S on her chest that has powers you haven't even figured out yet. That's like you. Yes, you're human, and with that comes some foibles to grapple with, but you are also divine in nature and divine in potential. That's your true identity. So, are you ready to get to work on the most important skill you will ever learn? You can protect your self-image by having the same pre-planned thought process as elite performance. That's like me, or needs work. I would encourage you to look for opportunities to declare, "That's like me," whether it's the visual rehearsal of an optimal performance or the most mundane of real moments. It's kind of fun. Affirm your optimal self-identity with, "That's like me." That's like me to buy my willpower at the store by not buying processed food. That's like me to show up for my workout even when I didn't feel like it. That's like me to respond to my teenager with love, even when she didn't deserve it. That's like me to question whether taking a pill is really the best solution for me. That's like me to keep looking for the root cause of my health challenge rather than agree to take the easy way out and just mask the symptoms. That's like me to take care of myself now so I'm prepared to take care of all the people who need me now and in the future. Thank you for tuning in today. That's like you to step up and spend a few minutes upgrading your body and mind by finishing this week's podcast. I'd love it if you could share with anyone whom you think might find it useful. Next week, we're going to talk about Shut Your Mouth Part 2. Until then, don't be normal. Thank you so much for tuning into the Health Courage Collective podcast. I am truly honored that you have paid me the enormous compliment of your time and attention. I would be so grateful if you would share this podcast with someone you know and subscribe so you never miss an episode. This podcast is for entertainment and information purposes only. Statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Christina Hackett and producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse events by use of information contained herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.